Oh, it's coming.
Yes, sir. Correctly welcome.
No, that is coming opposite, no?
వాళ్ళకి
Okay, okay, okay. It comes like this only. It was coming straight, no? For the other. The slide was coming straight, no?
straight గా వస్తుంది.
Okay. Yeah? Yeah, yeah. So see, I mean, we were primarily on chapter 1, and chapter 1 is what is called living. In the earlier class, I was just telling you what is meant by life, what are the basic characters of life. Primarily, like life is a complex organization of biomolecules. And due to which what happens is we have got growth, we have got metabolism, we got reproduction, we got adaptation, external to, and also response to external stimuli. That's what we had discussed in the earlier classes. And I was also trying to tell you about how there are exceptions to this. Like for growth, there's an exception because non-livings also show growth. For reproduction, there's an exception because you got mules, you got sterile worker bees, and also infertile couples and all that. And the most central point, what are the defining characters of life are, in the last class we had discussed, is like you take cell, because cell forms the basic unit of life. If cell is the basic unit of life, protoplasm is the physical base of life, DNA is called the molecule of life, chromosomes are called the vehicles of inheritance. You've got to remember these four. And because cell is the basic unit of life, which is present in all living organisms, it is very complex. And because of complexity of the cell, and cells are common for all living organisms, whether it is plants, animals, humans, or even microbes. The second very important factor, which is very, very important in terms of defining characters of life, is metabolism. Are you understanding? Metabolism is very, very important, central. So in metabolism, we have anabolism and catabolism. We have anabolism and catabolism. Most important process are photosynthesis. We got respiration. We got all the biochemical pathways. So when you're talking about metabolism, we are dealing with relation to we are dealing with metabolites, we are dealing with biochemical compounds, and we are also dealing with relation to molecular interactions leading to biochemical pathways. There are a lot of molecular interactions. So that way what happens is in your learning of biology, biochemistry becomes very much central. It's very, very important. You should have a very sound knowledge of biochemistry. So we have primarily that was cell, we have got metabolism, and I told you also there are a lot of molecules. Now, just if you take molecule A, B, C, and D and put them together, it does not show any sort of there's no reactions on it. So we have molecular interactions. And again, in the last class, I discussed about what is meant by consciousness. Consciousness means how you respond to a stimuli and how you have a memory of that. We'll get back to that a little later because that we'll try to connect those particular four things. We'll connect, say, characters of cell when you come into the chapter of cell biology. We'll connect metabolism when you come into plant physiology and metabolism. We'll connect into molecular interactions when we are talking about different sort of pathways. And we'll be talking about primarily about external stimuli interactions and all that when we come to something like flowering and all those particular things, or photoperiodism. So now the second part of that, what we are going to do today is, hello, Lahiri has also come, okay, and Santosh, okay. The second part of what we are going to do is, after that, what is living, I'm just going into what is called as the objective of today's classes. Primarily, you are trying to understand some basic things like what is taxonomy, what is nomenclature, what is classification. Second level. If you take the chapter, what happens is the chapter itself is divided into different levels. You've got to exactly know what is meant by levels. First one is basic introduction, biodiversity and AME. What's the meaning of biodiversity? Next is you've got primarily what is identification, what is nomenclature, what is classification. Then primarily you've got binomial nomenclature, next level. And later on, it starts off with relation to other sort of things like what are taxonomical categories, taxonomical hierarchies, and what are keys and all that particular things, taxonomical aids. So every chapter, whenever you're trying to read, it has got different levels. Remember that you got to only go according to that particular level. So today's class is we are going at the second level, second basic level of chapter number 1. So in this particular chapter, what you understand is, we understand that we have got a lot of diversity all around the world. All around the world, we have got very good diversity. And what do you understand by diversity? When you say diversity, it refers to variety and variability of life forms. Variety. Like, if you just look at the, if you're studying algae, you got a lot of unicellular forms, you got a lot of multicellular forms, you got a lot of colonial forms, and you got marine algae, you got freshwater algae. When you take, say, when you take fungi, in fungi, what happens is you got the most primitive type of organism, which are called as yeast or Saccharomyces. Then you got Phycomyces, Ascomyces, Basidiomyces, and Deuteromyces. They're all very much advanced, club fungi, and all those particular things. Even in bryophytes, you got liverworts and mosses. In pteridophytes, you got very primitive ferns as well as advanced tree ferns. If you take angiosperms, you got primarily, you got aquatic angiosperms. Then again, you got you got big trees primarily, which are flowering plants, and then again you got monocots. So wherever you touch upon whenever you're touching upon anything in the world with relation to life, you are talking about diversity. And remember, diversity is very, very central for evolution. And diversity is seen in the tropical rainforest. If you take the Himalayan regions, if you take the Western Ghats, you take the Eastern Ghats, you take the tropical rainforest or Amazon tropical rainforest, or you take the coral reefs in Australia. In all of this, you get tremendous diversity. Diversity means there is variation, a lot of variation. And variation is a basis for a lot of things. So we are talking both about variety. Like you think, like India is the origin of, say, 300 varieties of rice. 300 varieties of rice have originated somewhere in Cuttack. You know, that's one of the reasons we got the Central Rice Research Institute at Cuttack. And primarily, that means all the genomes of all the wild varieties we are present primarily. If you take Andhra Pradesh as such, we have the maximum diversity with relation to mango, with relation to chilies, with relation to turmeric. That way, every state in the entire, if you take the entire biogeographic region of India, we got a lot of diversity. So remember, we are talking in terms of variety and also the variability. What sort of changes occur with when plants evolve in time and space. So when you're looking at that particular thing, we primarily understand, okay, we understand that what happens is, you understand we have something called as variety and also variability of life forms. We are talking in terms of life forms. So whenever we're dealing with relation to variety and variability of life forms, we understand that the biodiversity accounts for, say, 1.7 to 1.8 millions of species. That is a sort of a number which has been estimated by something like the World Watch Research Institute. If you take the World Watch Research Institute, they have just put a sort of a number about what is called, if you take the International Union of Conservation of Biological Diversity, they have just put, okay, at this particular stage, we have primarily cataloged, we have named, classified, and we can identify 1.7 to 1.8 million species. Several species are still to be identified deep down in the oceans, up in the mountains and all that. We've got lots of species which have to be identified. So as of now, which has been totally catalogued as 1.7 to 1.8 million. Are you understanding this? So beyond this, like the thing is maximum, what they can ask you what is meant by diversity. So that is one concept which you got to, basically in a very, very small way, you got to remember it. And you got to remember this particular number of 1.7 to 1.8 million. That is the second important thing about the slide. So here what happens is, this is the number of the sort of species which we have, despite the fact that we have an evolution which goes for about 3.5 billion years. At the background of 3.5 billion years of evolution, we have 1.7 to 1.8 million species. So always you got to remember this particular thing. So this is a maximum. So yeah, maybe when you're going, just make a note. Just what is meant by biodiversity and what is meant by the sort of species. That is a concept which you got to primarily understand. How do we go about? Huh? Not this. No, it goes back. No. Second. Okay. No. Oh God. Yeah, not this. Okay, that's faster way for us. So now, when you look at the particular chapter, what happens is we have something called as historical. We should know in the chapter of diversity, what are the most important contributions? Like if you take Theophrastus, if you take Theophrastus, how does it go? Yeah? This arrow, yeah, okay. And last one, okay, good. So your fellows are helping me out, fine, that's nice. So when you take Theophrastus, remember Theophrastus, you got to remember the year. Sometimes they ask the years, but very rarely they ask about years. You don't have to remember every year. You don't have to remember everybody's birthday in your life, no? So if you remember your own birthday, it's enough. So if you take Theophrastus, between 370 to 380, he had written a book called Historia Plantarum. Now this is very, very important. Correct this as Historia. It's Historia Plantarum. So that is a very important that's a very important historical landmark. It's a very important historical landmark. Next, you got primarily what are the contributions of Linnaeus? What are the contributions of Linnaeus? So when you look at this, Linnaeus is called the father of taxonomy. He's also called the father of systematics. And primarily, I mean, if you take Karl Wall, Linnaeus is primarily a Swede naturalist. He was born in Sweden. So Sweden is a very good country primarily for a lot of classifications and all that. So he had written several things, like he had written what is called a Species Plantarum. Species Plantarum 1753 is very, very important. You need to know about all these particular things. Species Plantarum 1753, then Systema Naturae 1758. So this involves a lot of memory. And he introduced primarily the binomial nomenclature system. He introduced the concept of binomial nomenclature. And he had also written a book which is what is called as Genera Plantarum. Remember? So you got to primarily understand what are the most important things. The most important things, what are the most important contributions of Linnaeus? Primarily comes to all of these particular things. So you got to understand he's been the father of taxonomy, also systematic, Species Plantarum 1753, Systema Naturae 1758, and introduced the concept of binomial nomenclature and also Genera Plantarum. So these would, I mean, in other classes we'll be going in detail. This is just only the beginning with relation to learning, but at least you should know, okay, whenever in an objective they ask you this, any one of these can just touch on the sort of an MCQs. That's the goal, remember. That's the goal. How do you go about? Okay. Oh, it goes up. No? Huh? No, this one. Yes, sir. No, I don't know. So just do this. No. This one? No, it's going out. Just do this. Slide it up, sir. Yeah. We'll just try. Oh. Yes, sir. Okay. Next we go on taxonomy. Today is all fun. So what happens? We go on taxonomy. See, this Y should be coming over here, taxonomy. So taxonomy has been primarily studied by De Candolle, a scientist called De Candolle. Okay, this is good. So taxonomy, when you take taxonomy, where be? Okay. Remember, taxonomy was studied by De Candolle. So what does taxonomy primarily deal with? These are all definitions primarily. I mean, there's not much sense about all these things. You've got to get it like you're going through a vocabulary, that's all. So it is what is called, it's a scientific study. Many times you will think this is only the study. What happens in taxonomy? You study the principles, you study the processes of, and you also study the characterization and the identification in terms of nomenclature. That entire thing, and in terms of classification, is what is called as taxonomy. So remember, it is TAXONME. It's a big tax on you and me, isn't it? Not like that. So when you take taxonomy, what happens is, very, very importantly, it's been studied by De Candolle. Remember, the scientific study of principles and processes. There are some basic principles of taxonomy, and there are certain methods of taxonomy. Are you understanding? There are some methods that is called as processes. And basically, it involves what? It involves characterization, it involves identification, it involves nomenclature, and later on you do the sort of a classification. There are several things which go on in taxonomy. But you've got to understand, when you want to study taxonomy, the basic unit is the species. So supposing you want to become a taxonomist, what are you working with? You're working with species. If you are a cell biologist, you work with cells. If you are a molecular biologist, you work with molecules. If you are an ecologist, you'll be working with species. Are you understanding? So a taxonomist works with species. And we have got tremendous species. You know, we've got 1.7 to 1.8 million species. So the entire world is your lab. Remember, if you're a good taxonomist. That's very, very important, that you've got to be knowing about what is called as taxonomist. Then again, do we touch here? That's the way how we go? Or we'll try like this? Up? No?
Again, do that.
Which one?
Again, click and ask. What is the color? Click and go. Not answer.
No. Okay. Okay, chalo. How did it come? Do we have to, no double tapping? How does it come this? There are two things. Huh? No, it's coming big. Okay. Okay. That's enough. Yeah. So next we are going into what is called as systematics. We are going into something called as systematics. Now, what do you understand by systematics primarily? Okay. Again tap, again tap, again tap. So we're going to open 3 tabs. Huh? DNA, RNA, and proteins, 3 tabs. So here, what happens next? We are coming to what is called as systematics. What is the meaning of systematics? When you say systematics, primarily, it is a systematic arrangement. Okay, pattern lo arrange it, just like you're putting steps. It's a systematic arrangement. It's just like supposing, think you've got 10,000 books in a room and you want to put them in a library and you don't have a library. How are you going to organize those books? You're going to put them in a particular order. So similarly, when you read about species, when you do a lot of things on characterization, knowing about species, you've got to put them in a particular order. So putting them in a particular order, that science is called as systematics. So systematics is the scientific systematic arrangement, or it is a sequential order. Remember, it's a sequential order of putting organisms. So who proposed the term systematics? Linnaeus. Linnaeus proposed the term primarily called as systematics. Remember that. And what does systematic deal with? It deals with diversity. Already you know what is meant by diversity, no? You know, variety and variability of life forms is called as diversity. It deals with diversity plus their evolutionary relationship. Diversity in terms of evolution in time and space. Supposing you want to know what is the oldest variety of mango? What is the newest variety of mango? What is the oldest variety of rice? What is the oldest variety of wheat? Which is the sort of wheat which is good for very good chapati making quality? Or you want to think in terms of, maybe if you think in terms of spice crops, which is the hottest chili which is ever present on planet Earth? From where you got the best sort of an aroma. This is very important, because like if you take this year's Nobel Prize, This year's Nobel Prize 21 has come primarily from capsaicin. Capsaicin is primarily a chemical which is extracted from chilies, and they have suggested what happens to chilies and what makes primarily something called as hot or cold in plants. That means it's linked to the chapter of living world. Living human beings in relation to external stimuli. Ask sakta hai yaar. That's all. They can ask you a question without knowing the name of the scientist. So response to touch and memory of that. So people, based on the sort of chemicals which you develop from capsaicin, they are trying to develop different sort of receptors and make artificial receptors of those particular chemicals. Though it will not come in a competitive examination, I'm just telling offhand, just like that. So here what happens is we are talking in terms of diversity and also evolutionary relationships. So this entire thing is what is called as primarily called as phylogeny. So systematics is always linked to phylogeny. Remember that. Systematics and automatically evolutionary relationships and diversity. See, these are the three important keywords. Remember concepts in the form of keywords. When I say diversity, you say, when I say systematics, you say diversity. When you say diversity, you say evolutionary relationship, and the other person in the class says it is phylogeny. So remember, it's in the form of 3 or 4 very important words. And what sort of when in systematics, what do? You do comparative analysis. This is very, very important. You compare maybe a plant and a plant in terms of morphology, in terms of anatomy, in terms of anything else, any embryology, anything. So you're always in systematics. What do? Because you're talking about phylogeny, you want to know which are primitive and which are advanced characters. Remember, you're talking about what are called as primitive. You're talking about what are called as primitive characters, and you're also talking about what are called as advanced characters. What are primitive and what are advanced? If you take all the plants in the world, do you think we have got more trees or we have got more sort of grasses all over the world? Is it fully green? Or you have got only a lot of grasses? Grasses are monocots are most evolved when compared to dicots. Why are monocots more evolved? What is the type of pollination which you have in monocots? It is anemophilous pollination. Grasses have anemophilous pollination because they got versatile stamens. And when you got versatile stamens, they got a lot of abundance of pollen and they are wind pollinated. So they reach more places, you know. So primarily any wind pollinated plant is more, it's more diverse. Like you take any particular grass which moves, even it also, it also spreads like a runner. One side from asexual reproduction, where even by sexual reproduction by means of pollens. So when you're talking about evolution of grasses, think you're talking about grasses. We are dealing with relation to evolution of grasses. And I'm saying this is a primitive grass and this is an advanced grass. What are we talking about? We are talking about the systematics of a grass plant. Are you understanding what is meant by systematics? Always phylogeny, that is very important. Evolutionary relationship showing primitive and advanced characters. Like the most primitive sort of a flowering plants are aquatic plants. What is an example of an aquatic plant which is a national flower of the country? Lotus. What is the botanical name of lotus? Nelembo. You got to remember that. N-E-L-U-M-B-O, Nelembo. And primarily in lotus, because it has got primitive characters, in the entire world, what they are doing is they are doing the sort of gene sequencing of Nelembo. Already done. They extracted the DNA and they've done the gene sequencing on lotus or Nelembo, and primarily trying to see which are all the sort of primitive characters which are present in an aquatic plant so that they can transfer the gene to a higher plant. Remember, so in genetics and all, when you take biology advances very fast. 1900 Mendel, 1953 Watson and Crick, 2000 human genome sequencing. Now we are living in post-genomic era. Remember that. So you got to keep all this. When you're learning, you got to learn with a lot of vigor, you got to learn with lot of. You got to be very agile about learning for need not feel very sad about reading for a competitive examination. Remember. So here, what is the goal? What is the goal of systematics? The goal of systematics is to reconstruct phylogeny. Remember that. You're trying to reconstruct phylogeny. And that is, you're saying, okay, on the basis of the DNA, they are related. On the basis of RNA, they are not related. On the basis of morphology, they may be related. Again, on the basis of reproduction, because flower is conservative, they are related. So you keep on telling these two are A, species A and species B are related together. You'll say that, okay, I have an A species and I have a B species and I have a C species. A and B are always related. C and D are always related. So you're talking about reconstructing phylogeny. You'll say A, B, C, and D have come primarily from X, Y, and Z. You're reconstructing the sort of phylogeny. You can always do that. That means it's more open, like supposing, in a sense, you think there are 10 taxonomists and 10 taxonomists are all systematics. They work on systematic. That means everybody will be saying, okay, this is a primitive character, this is a primitive character, this is an advanced character. So they study evolutionary history. So all systematics, all persons who are called a sort of a systematic botanist. What does a systematic botanist do? He primarily studies phylogeny, he studies evolutionary relationship. He looks into terms of primitive or advanced characters of plants in time and space. That is very important, in time and space. So they look in the past, they look into the present. That way it is. Okay. So very important here is whenever you want to do systematics, classification is a part of systematics. I'm not saying classification versus systematics. Are you understanding this? If systematics is the umbrella, classification is one small part of the big umbrella called systematics. So what is the main goal of the world is systematics. And in systematics, what are you doing? You're doing taxonomy. What is taxonomy? Taxonomy is a tool. Are you understanding this? Taxonomy is a basic tool. You're using taxonomy and learning about systematics. And when you're learning on systematics, you're trying to learn on phylogeny. That's what we are trying to do. So like this, what happens is we have to primarily be, how do I do this? I have to stop this again. Okay. Oh.
From last second.
Okay. Now
Just click on board.
You can click on
Swipe, sir.
okay. Let's see. We have finished this. Let's go into this. Let's see. Okay. Oh God.
I think you should click on the arrow.
Huh?
That arrow, right side arrow.
This one?
Yes, sir.
Right.
Last one.
Last one.
Okay. That's again, it's coming this way. Okay. Okay. We go on the right side arrow. Chalo. Let's see what we can do here. Little bit. We'll just see. Though there is a lot of, space falling on this. Okay. Now what happens is we have one type of a taxonomy, which is what is called as classical taxonomy. Classical taxonomy is also called as alpha taxonomy. It's also called as alpha taxonomy. Classical taxonomy is based on morphology. It is primarily what happens is it is based on morphology. Okay. So in alpha taxonomy, just 5 minutes, no big deal. In supposing you're reading on alpha taxonomy or classical taxonomy, what do you primarily deal? You deal with morphology. It only deals with morphology. Remember? It deals with morphology. Classical, basic. You're only doing morphological studies, vegetative studies, and all that. That is called as one field which is called as alpha taxonomy. Now there is again new taxonomy. Now new taxonomy is what is called as biosystematics. Biosystematics is called as neo-taxonomy. You know? What is new is nano. Huh? Like that. So you've got biosystematics is also called as neo-taxonomy. So neo-taxonomy or biosystematics, who had proposed this? You got Huxley. Huxley primarily started up something related to new systematics. So what happens in new systematics? You take evidences from all branches of science. You take evidences. You take what you do? You take evidences from all branches of science for classification. You're using all the evidences. Cytological evidence, embryological evidence, biochemical evidence. You take all evidences from everywhere. I mean, supposing you've isolated a sort of a leaf, and you want to exactly know, my God, does it have phenols? Does it smell menthol? Is it an aromatic oil? Is it pigmented? And is it scented? Is it something like a tulsi leaf? Is it something like a ginger plant? You know, all the sort of smells, they're all, everything to do with aromatic compounds. So you also look at what are the coloring compounds, what are the coloring pigments. If you take maybe a cell from a carrot, it primarily will contain carotenoids. You'll take a cell from a beetroot, it will be purple in color, it contains some other compounds. So you'll take evidences from all branches of science and you look at what are the sort of natural groups. Like tomato, chili, and brinjal belong to a natural group of Solanaceae. So when you talk about neosystematics, remember neosystematics is more, it deals with some sort of a dynamic way of looking at things. It looks at the things from a very, very dynamic viewpoint. That is, you've got multi-level inputs. Many inputs are there in neosystematics. Are you understanding? Many inputs are there in primarily in the case of neosystematics or biosystematics. And what happens is, between, like, when you take the older systematics, in the older systematics and taxonomy, what happens is it was said species means static. A species will never change. Species, according to the new concept of biology, species can change. A species is mutable. A species can change. And between species, there are a lot of variations. Once upon a time, there was something called a sort of a static species. So that got stuck in the 18th century. 19th century, they said, okay, there is something like, if we take 1947s, 1930s and all, we had a lot of things on work on mutations. Then they discovered, okay, part of the DNA can change. Then you say species is mutable. So primarily what I'll try to do is, I'll try to stop down here for today because we had a little bit of difficulties. We started the class late and all that. We'll continue afresh again tomorrow. That will be more easier. So everybody, we are going on the same thing. You can also read through your NCERT books by the time. And especially with relation to the concept of what is living and the concept of what is meant by taxonomy and systematics, identification, nomenclature and all that, till there, before binomial nomenclature. Please do your homework. You keep on reading. Any questions, you just ask me directly in the class. Don't hesitate. You can ask me any question. Primarily, we are here to primarily help you out with relation to learning. So thanks a lot. Bye. I think that's easier. So now I hope this will close. Huh? It won't go, it goes. How do we do that? How do we close it? And those guys will come and do it. I think escape. Huh? Where's the red button? Here? No? Not that, not that. So you could understand a little bit.